tomorrow, of course, will mark the busiest day of the week at airports as some folks are trying to return home. To travel expert Laurie on what to expect. Bobby, great to have you. Record-setting travel, and ultimately we've seen some disruptions, not only from weather, but at the airports as well. They always tell you pack your patience, but give me something more than that, please, a tip.
A tip would be to leave early, even if your flight is not until later in the day, because just like you said, we did see some delays. We saw some delays the day before Thanksgiving in Denver and also in the Northeast at Newark Airport, and that was all due to some air traffic control delays. You're looking at about 90 minutes there just before Thanksgiving. But, you know, on those 2 days leading up to Thanksgiving, we saw about 2.6 and 2.7 million people travel respectively, and we're looking at those numbers about for tomorrow, the day where everyone heads back from their holiday just before they go back to work. So the TSA is saying they're looking at about 3 million people they're expecting at the airports tomorrow.
Absolutely, and I guess one way to avoid that crunch tomorrow would be if you had the flexibility in your schedule, you return home on Monday.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can, it's also going to be a lot cheaper if you do that as well. You know, tomorrow they're saying that you're looking at the busiest time periods being between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. I mean, lucky enough, we're not looking at too much weather around the country tomorrow, so weather shouldn't play into all of this. The hubs that the airlines operate out of should be moving along nicely, so really it all falls on the airlines now to see if they can keep their operation running.
Was there anything that you saw that was really out of the ordinary? I know there were some disruptions at airports because of FAA staffing. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, but ultimately it wasn't anything like we saw this summer 2 years ago, for example.
No, not at all. Things actually moved along pretty nicely aside from those hiccups in Denver and New York. If you did actually listen to the experts that said, you know, leave early and you were driving along the East Coast, if you decided to drive instead of fly, you did encounter all of those the rain that moved up through the East Coast. So you did see some traffic delays, but as it relates to the airport, things actually moved along pretty well. We did have that one hiccup over at Delta Airlines, though, with that stowaway that made their way over to Paris.
And let's talk about prices. What did travelers experience if they were flying for the holiday? Ultimately, we've seen prices rise for pretty much about everything, so I'm guessing it wasn't, you know, an easy bill to foot.
It wasn't an easy bill to foot, but if you planned in advance, you didn't end up getting the highest fares that are out there. You know, the best time to book a plane ticket is between 14 and 21 days before you want to travel. That's when the airlines are looking at their inventory and deciding just how many seats they need to fill and how to set the price to make sure that they're going to fill those seats before the flight takes off. Once you get below those 14 days, the airline assumes you really need to go because you're looking to travel at the last minute, and that's where you're going to see those higher bills.
That's me, and that's the kind of person that they get at the last minute. Thank you so much. Great to see you this morning.
Of course.
Laurie.